So, hi everyone, and welcome to today's community webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we'll be going behind the scenes of an award-winning Totara platform. And today we're joined by Kevin Avis from Circle Health Group and Matt Mundey from Think Learning. Hi to both of you, and thanks very much for coming today. We've also got Tom from Think Learning on the chat today, who's done a lot of great work on this project, so he'll be available to answer any sort of technical questions that you might have during today's webinar too. So Circle Health Group won the 2022 Best Healthcare Award. So congratulations to you all for that as well. It's a great award and really shows the success of this project. So I'm really delighted that we're going to be able to take a closer look at this award-winning project today. Kevin, if you wouldn't mind just changing the slide for me. So just a little bit of housekeeping from today's webinar. You're very welcome to ask questions as we go today. You can use the chat or you can use the Q&A. If you think of a question and it's part of the webinar, we might pause and answer that question as we go, or we might bring that question to the end depending on what it is. This session is recorded and it will be available on the Totara community after the session. And you're very welcome to follow up in the discussion forum or ask any questions if you think of them after the webinar today. If you could just change the slide again, Kevin. So if you're not already a member of the Totara community, if you're watching this webinar on YouTube, for example, feel free to come and create a free account on the Totara community. It's filled with thousands of learning professionals, probably doing similar things to yourself. And we also have dedicated help documentation, which you're able to look at as well, and that will teach you lots of things about Totara. So just to help us understand more about Circle Health Group, I'd love to ask Kevin if you could sort of explain what Circle Health Group does and everything about your company.
Yeah, sure. Just like that, here is a slide. Circle Health Group is an independent healthcare provider in the UK and the largest. And essentially, you can see our purpose here is about care. And these are the kind of things that we really value in the business that are really critical to us. And you can see from what's been outlined, it's effectively all about people and their care. And so from that, we have 60 hospitals across the UK where we provide largely elective care and rehab services. We've got about 13,000 staff. I think the next bit shows all the figures as well around our staff, and we've got more medical consultants on top of that. So that's Circle very, very briefly. Does that answer what it does?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kevin.
Should I just quickly show this is where we're located across the UK, the 8,000 staff. There's 5,000 contracted bank staff on top of that. These are some of our figures across the group, and then you can see the kind of interactions that we have with our patients. So there's a lot of activity going across our business, and it's growing as well, which is really good. We've had some good investment, and that is really kind of helping us enhance our offering and grow our offering across the business.
Thanks, Kevin. And so before you won the Best Healthcare Award, you had the platform up for a while. But what were some of the challenges you were facing beforehand?
Yeah, so we were a long-standing Totara customer, and we had it embedded in the business for about 8 years. So the business had gone through that pain of having 60 odd sites with our corporate offices, having different ways of managing the learning, going into one system, and done all that work and it being embedded into the business for a long time. And I think it would be fair to say that it wasn't a loved system. No one really liked it because it was generally about mandated learning. That was the focus, and albeit there was a lot of effort to kind of move beyond that. And there was a lot in there, but the focus was all about mandated learning. And our key things that took up our time was low quality data. And when I reflect on that, that's not typically true, because actually we had a kind of open way of managing our data, and the sites had responsibility for managing their data, which meant that our data was better than the HR data at the time. So that was one of the pains, is that not just low quality data, but there was like multiple sets of data for the same people. So it was really difficult to allocate and measure across the business. We spent a considerable amount of time managing and creating reports, and I could feel in my stomach. It took me about a day a week to create. There was about 6 Excel sheets that went out every week to 60 people, and they took about half a day to create, and then managing the queries that came back from that. So there's a lot of conversation about just reporting and getting reports from the system. But we had less than 3% people who had their appraisal conversations recorded in the system as well, because that was something we tried to push and try to use in core Totara. And then the major thing was poor UX and UI, and that was what we're facing up until about 3 years ago, when we started to change provider.
Thanks, Kevin. I think that low quality data is something that probably a lot of people can feel and understand. And so as part of the project that you wanted to elevate and move forward with, you decided to partner with Think Learning. So why did you decide to go with Think Learning?
Yeah, so Think Learning, and I'll let Matt chip in here as well, is that we had a really honest conversation with our previous Totara partner, and when that we need something different and we need someone who understands our market, because we felt we matured and that we just felt that we needed someone who could understand us a bit better. So we went out to tender and met Think, and they provided the kind of best fit, because they understood our market and they understood what we wanted to do, and they understood and had the expertise in investing into the platform, because we had done the basics of getting it in, and having some sort of user acceptance. People accepted that it was there, but we wanted to move beyond it and make sure that it was more than functional, but it provided a bit of transformation in the business. So the reason that we went with Think is because they understand the healthcare market. It was about the platform, and that's where their focus was, and they understood our ambition and where we wanted to go with it. Matt, I don't know if you've got any other comments about this here.
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, it was notable when we first met, Kevin, that you didn't ask for a demo of the platform. You dug straight into, right, who are the people? What's your approach to projects? Define what partnership looks like to you. So straight away, I knew that we were dealing with somebody like that, and it's been a great privilege to work with you. If I can say a few things about who Think Learning are and really how we've benefited from relationships like the one with Kevin. We love being a Totara partner. You can see some badges and creds there. We've got an aspiration to have the best Totara platform that there is. We work really hard on this. There's about 50 of us in the organization, and we've grown a lot in the last few years, about 300% actually. So big learning curve, big intense increase in numbers of clients and people in the company as well. But to have that best healthcare project in collaboration with Kevin was a great way to cap off the year. In the next slide, I've got 3 key numbers to talk about. One is for working with, as you can see, 70 odd organizations in the UK, a lot in public sector. There are some commonalities here. These organizations generally high stakes, they're usually regulated, and they're into and need quite complex educational interactions. Lots of functions, lots of features, which makes Totara a brilliant fit, and combine that with really, really sharp user experience. So we've got about 50 healthcare organizations that we partner with, and Kevin is a great example of that. He's really looking for holistic talent management out of his tech. Tech as an enabler for what's actually going on in his mind as to how he can affect and change the lives of his learners, clinicians in this case. So on the next slide, Kevin, I've got the next number, which is important to us, which is we've got around 20 of that 50 strong team who are specifically in R&D, they're solution architects, they're developers, they're in QA and they're testers. So I just wanted to give everyone a sense that as a partner, we're deep into custom work, bespoke and enhanced. That's something you'll see today. You'll see some quite heavily enhanced core across Learn, Engage and Perform. And you'll see some sort of brand new user journeys that we've built into Totara as well. So we love building, we do it all the time. This screenshot is actually interesting. It's from a client survey we ran asking, what are your roadmap priorities for us for the next 12, 24 months? And you can see that core LMS learning features and reporting, that sort of base of everything that we do, is still absolutely the priority, but some interesting elements working alongside that. So we've customized it under Kevin's sort of leadership and creativity. And in the next slide, Kevin, I've got my final number, which is another important one, which is that we have just the one code base. So it's that tension that we've worked really hard to solve, to cure as a partner, where there's a lot of custom and bespoke work, but it's in a unified code base. So it's a case of combining sort of really rapid roadmap work and agility and listening with that discipline that you need to be able to make a code base that can be easily upgraded and shared and implemented. It's a very sharing and collaborative approach that we have. And one more clip will take us to the end of my brief Think Learning intro, which is to say, yeah, thanks to Kevin, because working with Kevin has been great. He's a visionary, he's very solution focused, and I think what you'll see as he goes on through the presentation is that he really cares about the individuals in his organization, focusing on sort of real world results around talent management, career development, opportunity. So thank you. That's a quick intro to Think.
Thanks, Matt. It's always really exciting to see Think Learning projects. Always up for awards, always great. So we look forward to seeing many more to come in the future. Coming back to you, Kevin, and looking at the sort of performance and learning culture that you've tried to embed in Circle Health Group, what underpins that?
Yeah, I think we have to remember that we had this product in the business for 8 years, and that work of trying to move everyone to one platform had been done, and there was core agreement about what had to be done. So things like, and I know that they may be a pain, but things like the mandated learning were actually really helpful to show what the system could do. And there was agreement about how that was and how that was managed. And as much as I believe that we've enriched that by better data, what we had in our business was a clear understanding of what learning was, and there was, beyond the system, resourcing into our teams. So each of our sites, there was someone who had either largely a kind of what we call a portfolio role, where people take on responsibility for learning in the hospital, or there was sometimes a full-time role where someone would manage the learning in the hospital. So that was already happening, and that was a gift for us. And with the learning management system, a lot of it was used for just basic records of learning and managing learning and trying to encourage a blended learning approach. And of course, COVID really, really helped people going, oh, we need to get things online and we need to think doing things more blended. But that was already happening before COVID. COVID was just a massive opportunity. I don't want to say that it was a massive opportunity, but there was an opportunity that was presented itself when we were all home working, largely to get that out there, and people really looked to us to kind of go, how can we do this? So that was a brilliant platform to go on, that people wanted to use the platform and have it better. What was really important before we did anything also was the data. And actually I wouldn't do it again, but I actually think it was the right thing to do, but not the right way to go about it. A bit like that, do you know, that person says, oh, it's the right notes but not in the right order on the piano, that because of the data thing was so critical, and even though we had better data than the HR data, kind of overnight, and in agreement with my boss, we just downloaded all the HR data into the system and gave some people notice of it, but they didn't really understand the implication of it. So managers were in the wrong place, job titles were wrong. And actually what we've seen is now, because our platform is the most visible across the system, across the network, and people see it most of all, the data has vastly improved to the point something of, it was about 98% accurate when we did an analysis last time, whereas 3 years ago it was something like, I don't know, 60%, like I wouldn't even know. There was just job titles made up all over the place, and that made it really difficult to measure. So that was something really critical before we did it, was we had a really good foundation of learning in the business. People understood the platform, and we took the risk to start to map our data, or actually just, it was getting rid of our data and using the core HR data set to build upon this. So they were all the kind of foundational things that allowed us to move on with. I'm just going to move on to the next slide just before we go anywhere. And I think the kind of overall philosophy that I've got in the business, and the thing that's in my head is, so this is Ed Catmull, and he is known mostly for Pixar. He worked with Star Wars, and this is from his book Creativity 2.0. He says, with all the care that you put into artistry, visual polish frequently doesn't matter if you're not getting the story right. So for all the care that you put into artistry, visual polish frequently doesn't matter if you aren't getting the story right. And I think what's really important is the story for us, and that we really wanted to make sure that we had a really holistic perspective on learning and talent. And it wasn't about just something nice and neat. And I know there's platforms, and I watched a video yesterday on LinkedIn of someone else getting another platform, and it was presented as nice and sleek, and when I looked at the screenshots, I was like, oh, actually underneath that, I can't see much more. But we wanted to make sure there was, it met everything that we wanted, which was that learning, performance and talent and competence were all connected. And there's another quote, I can't remember who actually said it, but like, when you pick something up from the universe, you know it's all connected. I can't remember who said it. I'll remember by the end of the thing. But for me, everything was connected. So there's no way that you could do a course without actually being coached and mentored, or coaching and mentoring sometimes didn't work with exposure in the business, or actually your behaviors were really critical to the way that you manage things. And the people around me and my team all had that view, and it was seen in the operations, but we wanted to support that from a system perspective. And so therefore learning and competence and performance and talent were all interlinked, and if they were at a wedding, they'd all be at the same table, is my view on this. They're all deeply connected, and they're all their own thing. And that's what we wanted to present, was building our learning culture, and build on the resources that we created, but really invest in the performance and talent to enhance and enable that. I'm just going to show you some of the things that we invested in and invested our time in. So one of the things was reporting, because that did take about a day or a week of my time and another member of my team. And one of the things that we did was, instead of having weekly reporting, we pushed everything to Power BI. And that has really released us as a team, that just through using the system and allowing us to push data to another file, and that being picked up, and then that going to Power BI app, that happens overnight. And actually it's really interesting when our hospitals go, oh, there's some times where it might not have updated, and people panic. And we have to remind people that it was once a week only a few years ago. And now what we can do from that data is get really accurate data, and that's really transformed our time in the business. The next thing is appraisal compliance, and that was a massive success, because we used the core appraisal tool, and then we worked with Think to use their They're a workflow tool to help with appraisal compliance, because we wanted to provide quite a flexible approach to the appraisal process and how that worked. And what we saw was it moved from 5% at the time we were recording to 95%, and that was a massive achievement. And particularly because we're a regulated business, the appraisal is really important to us because that's what we get measured on, and the rates continue to be positive. The next thing that we wanted to do was use that data to start to build a picture around talent. So this is one of the first things that we did, was start to aggregate some of the data within the appraisal information and start to build some interactive reports around a 9-box grid. And what we were mindful of was that this was a piece of the puzzle, and what we didn't want to really put people in boxes, whereas some of the other things that I'm about to show you is that very holistic view on a person and how they might perform or behave in a business. So for a manager, and at our hospitals, they would have really clear information about training and what their compliance was. They'd have really clear information about their appraisal and their performance ratings, and they'd have really clear information about their talent grid score, which they could start to use some of our guidance to help people grow and develop in the business. But of course, that someone doesn't sit in that box and they stay there. There's lots of other things around it, and this is what we wanted to kind of really push on and really push the whole talent experience part of the platform. So I'm just going to show a video and hopefully this will work. It worked a second ago. Here we go. So this is the competency tool that we built, and which is part of the Perform suite anyway. But what we found was there were certain elements that we wanted to make easier for the user, and there was some feedback that we got around people wanted to see the change in their competencies as well. So we sat with Think and used the core competency product and developed it so that things could be easily accessed and people could self-assign themselves really easily, or they could rate themselves easier. So that was, and you can see here, I mean, it's a really small thing, but things like the way our competencies were quite big. I'm just going to go back just a little second. Just here, as you can just see that they're kind of sitting under a header, so you can see the relationship between where things are in a competency, and then also this thing of being able to quickly rate and save them is something that we spent some time on, and by using this tool, we're actually now able to take all of our competencies across the business, and we've got a suite of about 100 documents. And given that we're a clinical business, clinical competencies are really important to our staff. And what that will mean is when we start to move all this stuff over, is that all the specialisms and areas of work will be in one big data set that we can use for the business. And we've started to use, I think this is the management one here. We've started to roll out the management one now to help create individual pathways for people rather than just blanketly go on a course and hope that they're better. And you can see here how it lands and how it looks with different things. And one of the things I'm just hoping this video shows is the interactive element with the dashboards. So people don't have to kind of move outside of the page to get it, and they can see the child competencies underneath it. So if they click on that child competency, it will show them a different way of seeing the competency, which would look like that on the right hand side, and then you click back to it. So we wanted to make that as easy and clean as possible, which we did. The next one that I'm just going to show you is, why is that not working? Is the 360-degree profile. Oh yeah, this is some of the stuff that we did with the management and leadership stuff. So just behind there, there's the graph that you've seen, but also the way that people can search for competencies. So there was a drop down that people could select, and by checking this, they could select all the competencies in that model rather than have to go down and select each single one. The next thing that we invested some time in was the 360-degree feedback tool, which was already something that Think had offered as part of something they developed. But when we looked at it, we saw there was an opportunity just to make the experiences a bit better in terms of the UI, the UX. And again, this was really important to us because we saw that from a performance side, people could be really, really good at what they did. But actually underneath that, they might be a bully or they're not confident in themselves. So we built this 360-degree thing with Think, or developed it with them. So it was nice and easy and simple to do. So the boxes were aligned and the graphs came out as they expected. And it was quite, and you can see it's quite simple to complete and fill out. And I'm just going to get on to the next bit. Yeah, this is the bit here. And so this is their diagnostic report where people could see their overall score, which we RAG rated to give them an indication of where they were at in terms of their overall 360 feedback. And I just want to get to the radar graphs, which will come up soon. Yeah, there we go. And some of these radar graphs that we helped worked with Think on as well to let people visually see where they were. And the good thing for us is that the competency tools and the 360-degree feedback was all in the platform. People didn't have to leave it or go somewhere else. And the beauty for us is all that data is together. So at this very second, I'm developing a report around talent and performance and competency and 360-degree feedback, as well as using some other data sets to kind of help understand where we invest into our future leaders. And the good thing about things like our appraisal process is it asks very specifically if people wanted to be involved in coaching and mentoring or sharing their knowledge. And now that is being used as we develop next year our coaching and mentoring strategy. So it's all coming together. And now that we've deployed it in the business, I'm just gonna hopefully move on from this.
In this video, we're gonna.
So what it brings it all together is that we have heavily utilized each platform. So the three platforms, we were kind of early adopters. And I remember a colleague of mine saying, never been an early adopter on systems, whereas I've kind of disagreed from this perspective because we've enjoyed finding out how to do it and moving quickly with it. So with Learn, Engage and Perform, we've used them all. And with Learn, obviously we've got the core learning product. With Engage, we have used the Engage resources and pushed some stuff out, which I'll show you in a screenshot how that looks in a second. And the Perform we've used heavily with the competencies. And using elements such as the appraisal, which we've used through the workflow. Although like this isn't a perfect story and there's things that we still need to work on. And one of the things that we need to work on is around things like this, is that actually, because we've got so many years of content in there, I think we've got something like 600 courses at the moment that are available to people, is that we're potentially overwhelming our staff. And the challenge that we consistently get is provide a simple offering from our senior executives, but then from the ground up, they're going, well, we want to know about the intricacy of this and this and this, and then we're in the middle trying to manage this. So that's one of the things that we're working out, is about how we manage our content in the best way that people receive it in the best way. And the next thing also is that we try and manage the content in a way that's accessible and easy, and also we have to govern that through the relevant procedures and processes. But because there's so much out in the market and people can just go and find things, that's a challenge for us as well. And we're trying to work that out too, about how we can work with our learners to make sure that they're not in competition with us, but they're seen as partners to us. And I often am reminded of a colleague who said, anyone who works in learning development, their job is to make learning look easy, which I think we do, but they haven't seen all the hard work underneath it. So I can understand when people send us stuff and go like, oh, this is much better than you can provide. And part of me kind of squirms inside to go, oh, it's taken me months to get this thing done. But equally, it's about stepping aside from that and going, okay, how do we really partner with everyone in the business and equally encourage that people to kind of curate their own learning and support it. So just so you can see what our platform looks like. In order to the start of our journey to help people understand everything that's on offer is about the simplification of things. And what we realized is with the core dashboards that we tried to put everything in a block, and it just became a big massive thing that you had to scroll down and people didn't know where things were. And so we've developed things so that the menu at the top is really clear. It's really clear about our offering. Almost they're like supermarket aisles that you go to, leadership for leadership, apprenticeships for apprenticeships, like you would go for milk. That's what we were thinking was. And then every resource that we've got is down a left-hand side menu, where we can embed links to the relevant pages or parts of the systems, rather than having people having lots of things in the drop-down menus or lots and lots of different pages. So we've tried to do that. And the micro-learning, that's the engaged resources that we've tried to start to push out. And one of our projects that we're working on is using Engage to work with people that have had what we call maybe a never event, an event that should have never have happened but has happened, and start to curate learning from that so people can share that in the business. And of course, what we need to kind of get through is that people feel that they're psychologically safe to do that. And that was a big part of our work, is how do we get people to share in the first place, particularly those kind of things where we can learn from other people. And the other thing is about elevating the experience of people where they've got things in one place and not having to go to lots of different places. So for this one, this is a new dashboard that we saw Think develop, and we want that. Thank you very much. And we've worked with Think to get that live into our system, which we're nearly there. We're about 98% there to do this. So this is a mock-up of interactive radio dashboards that people can access, which just makes things a bit more interesting, a bit more visual, and presents people with a bit of a wow factor rather than just a list of information or multiple things they have to click on, whereas they can click on multiple things but not have to move anywhere to get them. And equally, there's a manager's version of this. So in terms of what's next for us, is automation and centralized admin is going to be really important to us. And it sounds really boring, but we've automated schedule reports and changed the headers and the text in the email to our hospitals about outdated training and overdue appraisals. And people have gone, oh, that's amazing, because that would have taken them half an hour to do every week, whereas we've just automated that, even though they've got the information on things like Power BI, but that's really changed it. And then automated processes where it's taken up a lot of time for people to enroll on learning, etc., etc. We're looking at that too. And the last thing is about automated evaluations to kind of meet the Kirkpatrick model, to add to our data set of actually we know our learning is making an impact, and we can correlate that against things like attrition or promotions, which we're beginning to do now. The next thing is the UX and UI. So you saw the interactive radio dashboards to support compliance. And then we're just starting to work on bespoke interactive visual calendars as well, because that's something that people struggle with about what's going on in the business. Big data, that will be a big piece of work for us. And I was really excited to see, I mean, I wasn't excited to see it, but there was a huge kind of data diagram, and the learning resources, the learning bit was a big chunk of that data. And actually what the business wanted was to see correlations between incidents and learning and risk and learning, and they wanted to map those across. Therefore, we're starting to code every course so that can be done, and that's quite exciting. So that we know that that can be done, and also the mapping with talent performance data is happening at this very second. And the last thing that we're looking at is organizational development. So we're looking at coaching and mentoring as another thing to add into the system, and focusing on that user created learning, coming back to that, what is our issue now? And we now then have the opportunity, now that we have a really robust system and other elements attached to it, that we can start to commercialize our product and look at a partnership model with our HE partners that we already have, creating a circle university. So we're ambitious, and actually what's enabled that is, yes, the learning culture is the system like Totara, and that's been equally enabled by the partnership at Think, who have gone, yes, this can be done, and they want to meet our ambition and work with us. And we found it a really fruitful relationship, and we found that in the last 3 years where people have had a headache with our platform, they've gone, this is amazing. And actually I caught myself, because I often get emails of like, oh, this link doesn't work or whatever, and I'm just in the mindset of like, oh, we could do better. But at a recent conference, the feedback that we constantly got was, we cannot believe the transformation that we've seen in the learning system, and thank you so much for everything you're doing, because it's making our jobs easy, and we can just access everything we need at a touch of a finger, a touch of a click of whatever it is. And also what we're seeing more is subject matter experts in the business are coming to us, and we want to host our learning on your platform. We want to work with you to do it. And I think, as much as we can look at all the figures that are presented on our award, such as the appraisal compliance and our induction completion and the money that we saved in terms of projects, the biggest success is being the feedback from the people in the business that have seen the investment and benefited from the investment. So that's really the story of us and how we've worked together. So Matt, I think we're going to hand back to you. Is that correct?
That was really great. Thanks so much, Kevin. It was really inspiring to see what you've managed to achieve and where you're going with the platform as well. I just wondered in general if you had some advice for anyone who was thinking about trying to replicate your success, or especially trying to use Engage and Perform like you have done. Do you have any advice for people out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about firstly find your champions, because you cannot do it by yourself. So obviously we've got 8,000 contracted staff, 13,000 with bank staff, all the medical consultants, and I think that in the business you need to find people that are going to champion that. And I'm really, really against the whole thing of like, oh, let's find a super user, or let's find but at different levels find people that are wanting to do it and can be the voice for it. And I think what's really important too is to kind of sell the vision as much as possible, because it is entirely possible to do things for people to do it themselves, that they can use any other tech that they've got available to them. If they've got an intranet, they could do it. But actually, what's the benefit of using it through the learning management system? And constantly being an advocate for it as well. I think they're really important. And I think for things like user-created learning or whatever find an opportunity where it can be used and modeled really well. And I think that's what we've been able to do, is hatch onto an opportunity and go, right, we're just going to go with it and see how it works. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, hugely. Thanks very much, Kevin. That idea of finding champions are so important, and also getting everyone involved in the project and not just sort of being an isolated project that you're trying to work on for the people, but involving everyone. That sounds like they're great advice. We've got a question from a couple of people coming in. Richard's asking, do you use 365? And if so, have you integrated with Teams?
Oh yeah, so we're just doing that now actually. We're just about to integrate with Teams, and so I've just got all the stuff to do it now, because that's our next thing that we want to do, is make sure that, because everyone does use Teams in the business, we want to make sure that people use it. So there is a thing in the background, Matt, you probably will say more about how you like put the GUIDs in and all that kind of stuff. So we're just about to do that. So I don't think you can hear my hesitation, because I've got an email sitting in my inbox that arrived today for me to do something about it. But that is something that we're actively working on.
Brilliant, thanks, Kevin. Helen is just asking if you wouldn't mind going back to demonstrate the way the child and parent competencies are displayed in that graph. I know that that's in a video a few slides back, so I don't know if that's easy to do.
I'm just thinking if I can change my, I'm just going to change my screen. Is that okay? And
yeah,
then
of course, yeah.
I've got an example. Because the challenge that we had was our competencies were really, they were really long. Just let me know if you can see. Can you see our platform now?
Currently I can see a darkness, but I'm hoping it'll show soon.
Matt?
No, try sharing again.
Just doing it again.
Try sharing.
No?
It's unfortunately not showing your platform.
Oh, let me just see if I can just do this.
It's okay. We are at the Q&A section, so this is the informal bit of the presentation. So if anyone else has questions, also we're just sort of trying to show this, feel free to think of them here today. We're also you can also think of questions after the webinar today and post them in the community, and we can come back to you on those as well.
Is that working now?
Unfortunately, it's not working, but maybe what we could do is take a screenshot of it later and we could post it in the community for Helen, and we could show that there. And also, Helen, the webinar will be available afterwards as well, so you can pause it on that space, but we can take a screenshot of it and send it to you afterwards.
Yeah. And I think just to answer to Helen's question is that what we saw is when we used the core product was it was just a big long list of competencies, and we couldn't work out what was what. And just from reading it, because some of our competencies were maybe like, perfect.
Can you see this?
Yeah, we can see that, Matt.
So some of our competencies were like just got lost. So it was that thing of we kind of had 3 levels of competencies, like a grandparent, a parent, and a child, and that's what we want to see. So if you click on Matt, if you click on, just go up to the top and click on rate competencies. And there's just, if you click on framework, just choose a framework.
Yeah.
So it looks slightly different, but the thinking is similar.
Definitely I know that one of the key things was to be able to show competencies by framework as well as by assignment, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. That's another thing too. Yeah.
Another neat thing is the ability here, if there are people management child competencies, a click through here to show and interact and then back.
Yeah.
And I think those are sort of the main elements that I can show in this demo zone.
There's another neat little thing there, Matt. You can see the little historic achievement mapping, which is there to show you a previous competency level as well.
And if you click on historic achievement, you can flick it on and off if needed.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it was all like in the same, whereas what we found you'd had to do lots of different things. Okay, that's good, Helen.
That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Sorry, that was down to my poor technical skills.
Oh, that was great. That was live. That was live action. That was good. So we've got a question from Alan next. So Alan's asking, how did you approach the challenge of adoption, as some people still view learning as like something else they need to do? You know, they've got lots of work to do, but they have this extra thing to do of learning.
Yeah, and I think that's why we really focus on talent, is that we knew that what was important to people in the business was that the conversations they had, the development conversations that they knew that we're having them in the corridor, but we just wanted to kind of say, okay, if you're doing that, why not do that really, really well? And why don't you do that to the best that you can? I suppose what also helps us is we're a regulated business, so people like that there's evidence for things. So we kind of we worked with that, even though we wanted to provide a kind of flexible approach to it. I think what was really critical and what's been really helpful is that there's been executive sponsorship for stuff. So every level of the business have had some level of investment in that's beyond the mandated. So it started with our senior execs and then went down to our managers. And actually today is the first rollout of our front-facing supervisors that are not actually managers. So alongside, I think there's like a triad of things, of like things that you have to do, things that we want you to do, which is like 360, and then that is supported by the investment by the exec. And we just kind of rode with it and went, okay, that's fine. Yeah, we can work with that, because it was an opportunity that doesn't come along every so often. That sometimes often learning gets cut, and we just went, yeah, that's fine. We'll work with that. So I think there were the three things that made us happen. We just saw an opportunity and went, yes, we can work with that. We can do that now, and made a change to how we were doing things at the time. Someone would say that's agile.
It's
Okay.
definitely felt well working with you. Kevin will ask you to do difficult things, but in that calm, assured, Scottish lilting way, and it makes you kind of believe in yourself a bit. But you do need someone like Kevin, ideally, who's got exec sponsorship, but has also got that vision and that care. So yeah, it's been good.
Great, thanks, Kevin and Matt. So just Sharon's asking a question as well. How long has it taken to implement all the areas of the system or to get to this point? And I know obviously you had the platform for a long time, but since you started to progress with the platform, how long has it roughly taken?
I would say year one was about embedding a new way of it looking and feeling. And year one was also about the appraisal. That was year one. Year two was about adding all the extra elements, such as the 360, the competency. And now we're in year three, which is about bringing it all together. So I think it's taken us, bear in mind that we had 8 years of it before, and there was about realistically a year prep as well. Bear in mind that we're a big business, multi-site. So if you're a smaller business, I think that would take you a shorter time. But essentially that before that first year, when we had that year prep, I created chaos by just changing the data. But it was the right thing to do, I assure myself. But I think it's taken us a couple of years to get to where we are now. But I don't see it as like a landing point. I just think it's just a constant iteration of what's next, and how do we improve what's next. So I think, in short, 2 years. The real answer is it keeps moving.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Kevin. Lucy's just asking, you looks like you produce lots of reports. Do you find all the data you need is out of the box from Totara, or are you having to create lots of bespoke reports?
So the Power BI, the only manipulation that we do on the Power BI app is actually, it's not even a manipulation because we use the data within Totara. So whatever comes out the box, we just calculate through Power BI. And actually what that's enabled us to do is provide much more filtering. It sounds quite dull, but actually what we were seeing is before we could use something like Power BI is that the compliance rates were impacted by retention. So if there was a lot of recruitment, there'd be a considerable drop in compliance and people would get upset about that. Whereas actually now what we can do is, because we've used the settings and the certification of, okay, it runs out after 100 days when they first get assigned, we can use that date in the reporting to then filter between a realistic figure of compliance and actually what the real figure of compliance is. So if we're going to look at the Power BI reports, there's very little manipulation to do with the data. Very, very manipulation. I think with the appraisals is one thing, but that's it. It's mostly just calculations from the data that you would do in Excel, but it's just being put into Power BI. Hope that answers.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Just one more question. If anyone else has any final questions, feel free to post them now. So Paul was just asking, do you think your level of engagement can be achieved with only Learn and Perform, or do we also need to look at Totara Engage?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Like, because I think the products in there are really positive and good, and I think Engage does provide a massive opportunity for user created content, and that's where we need to get to next. And also I think learners are looking for things that they can do in 1 or 2 minutes. So that's entirely possible to do within the Learn platform. I think the limitation you would have is that learners might not be able to make their own things. So I think so. And to be honest, we're not a massive, we've not really used Engage loads. We just use it for housing resources that we've created at the moment. So the answer would be yes, but there is an opportunity for that whole user created stuff as well.
Yeah, I would support that. And there are some quite nice UX and visualization elements that Engage will give you as well, just to
like the thumbs up and the
absolutely, the social stuff.
That is good. Yeah,
some of there's a couple of blocks, dashboard blocks, and as well as the machine learning and the social stuff that just lift that learn experience. And if you can weave that into the overall talent and career pathway journey, as Kevin has done, then I'd say having Engage in there is powerful.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Kevin. I mean, obviously, I'm a massive fan of Engage. I think the speed at which you can create new content is hugely beneficial as well, and also just letting all those different subject matter experts create content as well. I think there's lots of opportunities there. But okay, thanks very much, Kevin and Matt and Tom, today for coming on and talking to us all about your great award-winning platform. We'd love to keep following it in the future and come back to you in a couple of years or so and see what else you've managed to achieve with it. But thanks so much today for your really thoughtful presentation, Kevin, as well, and telling us all about the platform. It's been really interesting.
Thank you very much.
And if anyone does have further questions, feel free to ask those in the Totara community and we can come back to you there as well. But thanks again, Kevin. Thanks very much, Matt. And thanks, Tom, for your time today. And thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.